Hello beauty, I've decided to reshoot the video tutorial on making this off-shoulder top with puffed sleeves. I aim to demonstrate the sewing process in detail, step by step, to make it easy for beginners in sewing to create this top effortlessly for themselves. Let's get started. We'll begin with sewing the front part of the top. The front part consists of 3 pieces, the front central panel and 2 front side panels. I'll join the side panels to the central panel along the relief lines. Starting from the bottom line, I'll connect the side panel to the central one, moving upwards. It's crucial to join the pieces from the bottom line to ensure precise alignment and accurate relief line. As I reach the midpoint, I'll join the pieces while holding them in my hands, bending the central piece to form an arc. It's essential to do it this way because the relief line at the top of the pieces around the chest area is quite curved. Taking the second front side panel, I'll align it with the central front panel, starting by aligning the pieces along the bottom line. I'll pin them together, moving from the bottom line upwards, doing this on a flat surface. When reaching the midpoint, I'll hold the pieces in my hands, bending them inward to form an arc in the side panel. If you try to join the pieces on a flat surface, as you can see, it's unlikely to work well, making it difficult to achieve precise alignment, especially around the chest area. So, be sure to hold the pieces in your hands, forming an arc inward in the side panel. At the top of the armhole line there will be an allowance of 1 cm from the side panel. This is normal. When you turn the pattern over to the front, you will see that the armhole line is even. So the front pieces together. The front pieces are sewn. The raw edges need to be finished on an overlocker, and the seams pressed towards the central panel. Use a special pressing hem around the chest area to create a beautiful chest line. The back consists of 4 pieces, 2 central panels and 2 side back panels. You need to join the side back panels with the central back panels along the relief lines. Just like when joining the front pieces, start by aligning the pieces along the bottom line. Pin them together, moving from the bottom to the top. The pieces should be folded with their right sides facing inwards. Sew them together. Finish the raw edges with an overlocker. Press the seams, then press the seam towards the center of the back. Join the front part of the top with the back along the side edges. The pieces should be folded with their right sides facing inwards. Sew them together. Also, finish the raw edges on the sides with an overlocker. Press the seams towards the back. At the very beginning, I make a mark on the top line of the sleeve, indicating the center line. I simply fold the sleeve in half and make a notch. For convenience, I also mark it with chalk. I fold the shoulder strip, which will be attached to the sleeve, in half and make a notch at the center. It's important to do this to precisely match the pieces after gathering along the top line of the sleeve. On the top line of the sleeve, you need to make 2 rows of gathering stitches. On my sewing machine, I set the maximum stitch width, which is 4 mm for me, and sew 2 rows. The first row is sewn 0.5 mm from the edge, and the second row is sewn 0.3 mm from the first row. I take the 2 bottom threads from the bobbin side to gather the fabric. The gathering should match the length of the shoulder strip. Once enough gathering is done, I tie the threads to secure the gathering. Also, note that I marked 1 cm on each side of the shoulder strip. The gathering length on the sleeve should correspond to the length of the shoulder strip minus 1 cm on each side. This 1 cm should remain free. Now, I attach the shoulder strip to the sleeve, starting from the center. The pieces are folded with their right sides facing inwards. Turning the sleeve on the wrong side, you'll see that there is a 1 cm allowance from the shoulder strip on both sides. This is how it should be. Turning the sleeve back to the right side and directing the shoulder strip upwards, you'll see that the armhole line is smooth. Sew it together. You need to attach elastic to the shoulder strip. To determine the length of the elastic you need, attach the elastic to one end of the shoulder strip and stretch it to the other end of the shoulder strip. This way, you can measure the required length of the elastic. In my case, the length of the elastic is 10.5 centimeters. Turning the sleeve inside out, I direct the seam allowance downwards and pin it to keep it out of the way while attaching the elastic. From the seam line, I measure 1 centimeter, and this is where the elastic will be sewn. Use elastic no wider than 1 centimeter. On the sewing machine, I switched the stitch from regular to zigzag and increased the stitch width to 3 millimeters. At the beginning, I make a backstitch and leave the needle inside. Now, I stretch the elastic and sew it on. The elastic should be sewn while stretched. From the right side of the sleeve, you'll see the zigzag stitch, and from the wrong side, the elastic is attached. Now, I direct the seam allowance upwards into the shoulder strip. At the top edge of the shoulder strip, I fold the seam allowance down by 1 centimeter and fold the shoulder strip in half, so the seam allowances on the seams are tucked inside. I hand-stitch the shoulder strip with small stitches on the bottom. I trim the excess so that the armhole line on the sleeve is smooth. Moving to the bottom of the sleeve, on the wrong side of the sleeve, I fold the seam allowance twice by 0.5 centimeters and first secure it with hand stitches. Then, I sew a finishing stitch 0.1 centimeters from the edge. There will also be gathering at the bottom of the sleeve. After finishing the hem of the sleeve, you can sew 2 rows for gathering. Set the maximum stitch width on the sewing machine. I sew the first row 0.5 centimeters from the seam line and the second row for gathering in the middle between the seams. Leave a 1 cm seam allowance on the side edges of the sleeve that I take 2 threads from the bobbin side, which are the lower threads, and gather the fabric. Similarly, on the other side of the sleeve, I gather using 2 lower threads. The gathering at the bottom of the sleeve should be done to the width of the arm circumference at the upper part of the arm, adding a 2 cm seam allowance and 1 to 2 cm for ease of fitting. My arm circumference is 28 cm, so I added 2 cm for the seam and 1 cm for ease of fitting. This results in 31 cm, which is the length for which I need to gather the bottom of the sleeve. After gathering to the required length, I tie the thread ends to secure the gathering. Now, I distribute the gathering evenly along the entire length. I fold the sleeve with the right side inside, aligning the side edges of the sleeve, and sew them together. Finish the raw edge with an overlocker. Remember not to cut off the ends of the overlock threads but tuck them inside the overlock seam from the wrong side. Attaching the sleeve to the armhole. First, I align the side seam of the top with the side seam of the sleeve. Before proceeding to attach the sleeve to the armhole, I mark 1 cm seam allowance on the back for joining the top edge of the back with the facing. Similarly, on the front part of the top, I mark 1 cm seam allowance for joining with the facing. Now, I attach the sleeve to the armhole on the front part of the top at this point, ensuring that there is a 1 cm seam allowance left at the top of the front part of the top for attaching the facing. I also attach the sleeve to the armhole on the back side up to this line. I sew the sleeve. You can see that along the top edge of the top, both at the front and back, there is a 1 cm seam allowance left for attaching the facings. Finish the raw edges of the armhole on an overlocker. I've prepared the facings. First, I fused them with fusible interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric. I finished the raw edges of the bottom and side edges of the facings with an overlocker. I attached the facing for the front part of the top to the top at the center first. Then, I attach the ends of the facing to both sides with the ends of the armhole. Note that I placed the facing with the wrong side up. I join the facing to the back. Before attaching the facings to the back, the raw central edge of the back needs to be finished with an overlocker. Sew it on. In the center of the front, I make a notch, stopping 0.1 centimeters before the seam. For extra security, you can sew a second row of stitches in this area before making the notch. I tuck the facings inside the top, aligning the top edge. I additionally secure the facings with hand stitches. I direct the seam allowance corners on the back inside so they don't protrude. The zipper should be sewn so that it opens from the bottom to the top, allowing you to put on the top easily. If you sew the zipper so that it opens from the top to the bottom, the bust might not fit through the waistline. Remember, you can choose any other type of closure depending on your design ideas. I sewed in an invisible zipper. To be honest, sewing in an invisible zipper is my least favorite part of sewing. If you, like me, don't enjoy sewing in invisible zippers, give this video a like so I know I'm not alone. I directed the facings downwards and secured them with hand stitches. I trimmed the end of the zipper and also secured it with hand stitches. For finishing the bottom of the top, I fold the seam allowance 1 cm to the wrong side. Note that the unfinished bottom edge should be finished with an overlocker. I fold the 1 cm seam allowance, first securing it with pins and then with hand stitches. Then, I sew a finishing stitch 0.7 cm from the edge. The side edges of the facings need to be secured to the armhole. I'll do this with hand stitches, but you can also do this on the sewing machine, whichever you prefer. All done. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.